Okay, hi everyone. This is Nikki Yu. Hello, this is Nikki Yu, also known as Faces Trader, and we discuss today Aboitiz Power, focusing on renewable energy for the Philippines. The category will be transitioning to renewable energy, so it's part of energy provision, electricity for the Filipinos. This is Nikki Yu, and let's begin. May 3, 2021. So their CEO and president, Mr. Emmanuel V. Rubio, said that in the next 10 years, we will further grow our clean energy portfolio, both domestically and internationally, in an effort to help build the country's renewable energy market and to contribute to the global and renewable energy goals. Last year, 2020, was a year of plans, but this time around, 2021, we're going to put all these plans into action. We energize the dreams and hopes of the Filipino people for a better future. So this is how it looks like today. You've got 4,653 megawatts total net sold capacity. Approximately 2,700 of that, or 58%, is coal. You've got oil, 16%. Your hydro is 17%. Your geothermal is 8%. Your solar is 1%. Consequently, in the next 10 years, their goal is to have a more balanced mix of 50-50. So a few things about Aboitiz Power, they own the following plants. So the management company of SN Aboitiz Power Benguet owns the Ambuklao Hydro Plant, Bacon Hydro, Benguet Hydro, Binga Hydro, Davao Hydro, Magat Hydro, Manolo Fortish Hydro, Sibulan Hydro, Sabangan Hydro, Mares Hydro, Tudaya Hydro, Tiwi Macban Geothermal, San Carlos Solar. So these are their following plants and their ownership structure. Some of them are 50-50, some of them are 100%, as you could see on this table below. And the attributable net selling capacity is 927 megawatts. This is as of December 16, 2020. So this is that part, the hydro. Okay, as you could see, Aboitiz Power's 10-year strategy is to go from current 4,432 megawatts, the one you see here, 4645 megawatts, to double it to 9,000 megawatts in year 2029. The strategic direction is to grow double and to include international business to become 13% into the generation portfolio. About 65% of all the new capacity will become clean energy, and as a consequence, this will shift the entire mix to almost 50-50 clean energy thermal. So this is where they're going into. Energy consumption in the last 4 years, as you can see, 2016 to 2019 numbers here. Total household is about 564,000 kilowatt per hour. Total purchased electricity is about 24,000 last year. 2018 is about 149,000. So they generate electricity for your energy consumption. They generate power. Water consumption and water recycled, you could see this in cubic meters. Total water consumption has been about 680 to 700,000 million total water consumption in cubic meters. Okay, 55% of that is recycled water. A few things about Aboitiz Power. It is a listed company in the Philippines with over 7.35 billion shares outstanding at current levels of 23.1 at the time of this video. The market capitalization is about 170 billion pesos, or roughly about $3.2 billion. 3.2 billion dollars. From its valuation ratio, you could see that the dividend yield is about 3.68%. Their dividends was about 85 cents in the last 12 months, and their PE ratio can be seen computed here is about 15 times PE, with trailing month earnings per share of about 1.5 peso, 1 peso and 50 cents. Okay, they're gonna report earnings. They actually just reported just recently, March 16. So we're going to read the first quarter results. So their 10-year strategy is to grow geothermal, to grow their large hydro plants, and to increase solar in their portfolio as well as their run-of-the-river. So they also showed and shared in their newsroom that integrated management system of Aboitiz solar and geothermal business units obtained zero non-conformity for 5 consecutive years. Let me read that. AP Renewables and San Carlos Sun Power, both renewable energy generation subsidiaries of Aboitiz Power, passed the second surveillance audit for the IMS last Feb 8 to 2021. External auditor TUV Rhineland Philippines commended the existing certificates of both companies on the following standards: the ISO 9001:2015 for quality management, the ISO 14001:2015 for environmental management system, and the ISO 45001:2018 for occupational health and safety management systems. TUV Rhineland's lead auditor Rafael Magsino noted 8 positive findings and zero non-conformity for both APRI and Sakasun. We saw how APRI and Sakasun have continuously improved throughout the years. The results confirm these organizations effectively implement the IMS. By the way, if you look at Facebook page of Aboitiz Power, they are actually actively hiring people who want to work in the clean energy portfolio as they ramp up and grow their capacity to double in the next 9 years. So take a look at their job postings and their job boards. Let's read from Wikipedia what Aboitiz Power has accomplished. This is a company that is the largest subsidiary of Aboitiz Equity Ventures, contributing 71% of its total income in the first 3 months of 2019. They hold all the assets in generation and distribution of electricity. The company's power generation unit is engaged in solar, coal, oil, hydroelectric, and geothermal facilities, basically total package. On July 16, 2007, or about 14 years ago, it has become a publicly listed company on the Philippine Stock Exchange. They had 1.8 billion shares out of the they IPO'd 1.8 billion shares out of the 7.2 billion registered common shares at approximately 5 pesos. Now, the company established the SN Aboitiz Power, a joint venture with Norway-based company SN Power Invest AS in 2005 with the goal of producing renewable energy. Introducing the floating solar farm, this is a method of putting solar panels on a body of water to lessen land use in Tawi-Tawi and Magat Dam in Isabela. In April 2019, the Philippine Competition Commission and the ERC and the Senate Committee conducted separate probes on a series of outages in Luzon that is said to be caused by alleged collusion among power firms as a way to increase electricity prices. Power companies denied the claim. Aboitiz Power said that the stated outages were actually bad for business and they were very much open to any investigation of this power collusion conspiracy. According to the Department of Energy, the outages were just due to technical issues caused by old and new power plants, maintenance shutdown, and reduction of power rating of some facilities. We will also want to understand a few things. In 2020, the subsidiaries are Davao Light and Power Company, Visayan Electric Company, Cotabato Light and Power Company, Hijos de F. Escanio Inc., Papanga Energy Ventures Inc., San Fernando Electric Light Power Company, Subic Enerzone Corp. And if you notice, the company's revenue last year, 2020, was 110 billion pesos, meaning electricity is a life-generating, recurring type of business. Net income was 15 billion pesos. Total assets so far is 400 billion pesos. Their total equity is 127 billion pesos, which means that their current book value is about 17 peso per share, which is not that high and not that low compared to the current levels of 23 pesos. Let's see. So this is the April 2007 IPO. They raised 8.4 billion pesos. And as you could see, they raised 8.4 divided by 1.8. Do the math. 8.4 divided by 1.8. It's about 4.5. So it's not really 5. It's about 4.5. Because 4 times 1.8 is 7.6, 0.5 is 7.6 plus 0.9 is 8.5. So it's a 4 peso 50 cent IPO. Okay, you could see here that they used that IPO 8.4 billion pesos to actually finance their big government assets, big for 4 of the government's power assets. That was the Masinloc coal-fired power plant, The Ambuclao being a hydroelectric power plant, the Palimpinon, MW Palimpinon, and the Tongonan geothermal power plants. Yeah, so they did all of that transfer for Aboitiz Power in exchange for shares, and that's really how it became and came to be. The lead advisor for this was UBS and for the IPO. Let's understand that energy mix again. Let's watch this one from Aboitiz Power's
We
own
all
channel.
know we need energy, but do we know where our energy comes from and what kind we need? In most places, electricity comes from a variety of sources. Here in the Philippines, we use both renewable and thermal power sources. The combination of these sources is what we call our energy mix. The energy mix varies from country to country. It depends on the availability of cost-effective supplies of energy sources and their daily demand for electricity. The point of having an energy mix is to find the most ideal combination of sources to supply the country with sustainable, sufficient, and cost-effective energy that fits its demand profile. To see why this matters very practically, let's look at a country's daily power demand. In the course of a day, some establishments and systems require power 24/7. They make up what we call baseload demand. As the day progresses, especially during work hours, more power is needed. This additional demand is called intermediate demand. At key moments in the day, demand will rise above the average due to the amount of electricity people are using at those times. This is called peaking demand. On top of all this is an allocation of energy on standby called ancillary services or reserves. This allows the grid to continue to operate despite the intermittency of supply from sources like solar and wind, and necessary forced outages of power plants. So how do the different energy sources and the energy mix come into play with all this? Each demand has different requirements, and the available sources differ in qualities such as reliability and cost. Consider solar power. It does a good job at alleviating energy demand during daylight hours despite its intermittent nature. Coal would be an ideal fit for baseload demand because it's cost-effective and can run reliably and efficiently throughout the day. Power sources like natural gas or hydro are flexible and reliable to fill in for the intermediate demand. Oil plants are very flexible, so they can start and stop operating at any time. However, these can be more costly to operate when they run 24/7. This might make them a good fit for peaking demand. Among other things, these daily demand considerations come into play when crafting the ideal energy mix. But efficiently filling daily demand is only one part of the puzzle. A powerful framework for looking at the whole energy mix is something called the energy trilemma. The World Energy Council explains the energy trilemma as the balance between the three priorities of the energy industry, namely energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. Energy security is basically the availability of enough energy supply to meet both current and future demand. This is where the need to address the different power demands would come into play. Energy equity means access and affordability of energy for the population. Here, cost is the primary concern. And environmental sustainability means that things are working for the good of the environment, such as using renewable energy sources in our mix. So how can the energy trilemma help us maximize the energy mix? Since each source has its trade-offs, there is no single energy source that is capable of addressing the entire trilemma at the same time. The goal, therefore, is to maximize all available energy sources by managing the advantages and drawbacks.
So in the past 5 to 10 years, there was still that trilemma, but about 2018 onwards, we have seen that the energy sustainability is already skewed, and environmental sustainability is very much skewed onto solar and wind and a lot of hydro. So it is just right that the Philippines is actually transitioning, specifically Aboitiz Power, towards a doubling of actually clean energy mix. But let's understand the current situation. The current situation is that they are powering Mindanao. For those who aren't aware, in 2016, they actually powered and ushered the inauguration of Therma South Inc. There's a 300 megawatt base load coal-fired power plant sitting on Benugao, Toril, Davao City, and Barangay Sirawan, Santa Cruz, Davao del Sur. This is actually the very first base load coal-fired power plant entering the Mindanao power grid. Therma South entry came at a much needed time when Mindanao was beset by long rotational brownouts around 2013 to 2015 due to a power crisis. During this period, Mindanao had deficiency of power supply ranging from around 50 to 300 megawatts, said Mr. Daniel Aboitiz, who was Chief Operating Officer of Aboitiz Coal Business Unit around that time. Prior to the entry of the power plant, Mindanao was heavily relying on the 982 megawatt Agos and Pulangi hydropower complexes. However, due to the aging and deterioration of these Agos complexes, combined with a situational problem and a siltation problem in Bukidnon, the power plant was only around 40% of its dependable capacity. Mindanao is experiencing tight power supply during summer seasons of 2012 to 2016. And then with this power crisis, it was very clear that Mindanao's Aboitiz Power was the first mover addressing this crisis in Mindanao. Therefore, with 300 megawatt provision of additional capacity, contracting 260 megawatts to more than 20 electric cooperatives and distribution utilities across Mindanao. The entry helps spur economic activity as more investments poured in due to a stable power supply. Apart from just helping address the power crisis, we believe that TSI and all our power plants in Mindanao contributes to the economic growth by providing reliable power supply, making the city more attractive to investors. So let's understand this coal-fired power plant in Mindanao.
In the Philippines, companies like Aboitiz Power are opening their doors to the media in an effort to dispel what they call misinformation about the industry. This is the first coal dome in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia. It's located at the Therma South coal-fired power plant in the middle of Davao City and Davao del Sur. It stores in a sealed container over 200,000 metric tons of coal, which powers over 20 electric cooperatives and distribution utilities in Mindanao. The plant, operated by Aboitiz Power, opened in January 2016 and is now fully operational after initial hiccups.
Coal is the cheapest source of energy, but environmentalists see it as the biggest single source of carbon dioxide emissions from human activity. The burning of coal produces greenhouse gases, one of the biggest causes of global warming. Coal-powered plants worldwide are adopting so-called clean coal technologies to mitigate the inherent drawbacks of coal. But environment group Greenpeace says the trade-offs involved in this technology makes clean coal a myth. It says clean coal methods only move pollutants from one waste stream to another, which are then still released into the environment. Anytime coal is burned instead, contaminants are released and they have to go somewhere. Aboitiz Power uses the latest circulating fluidized bed technology, which mixes coal and limestone for supposed lower emission of pollutants. From this port, coal imported from Indonesia is picked up by a screw-like machine, which then transfers the coal to the dome through a huge protected conveyor belt. In these silos, coal ashes are trapped so it won't mix with the air. The ashes are then transferred to this ash pile, where they are regularly watered to avoid particles from being carried by the wind. These are set to be transferred to a cement plant upon government's nod. The company plans to do it carefully so the wind won't blow away the dangerous particles, which might affect residents. Sebastian Lacson, Chief Operating Officer of the coal group of Aboitiz Power, admits there's no such thing as clean coal, but it could not be totally abandoned just yet. While the company also manages renewable energy sources nationwide, Lacson says the Philippines could not solely rely on hydro, geothermal, and solar power plants, which are not 100% dependable.
In 2010, there was a big drought here in Mindanao, very bad drought. And I think that was the first time that Mindanao realized that, wow, this dependence on hydro is actually not a very good thing. The big drought of 2010 showed the infirmity of relying on a technology that's not really base load.
Hydropower plants, he said, could not generate much power during drought, in the same way that solar energy is not much reliable during cloudy or rainy days. But environmentalists refute this, saying with the right mix of renewables, the power supply could be met. For the company, diversifying renewable and non-renewable sources is the way to go. To date, 32% of Aboitiz Power's energy portfolio is composed of renewable sources, but a bulk, 68%, is still on coal and oil sources.
We really started in the generation space in hydro. So We continue to be a prolific builder and operator of hydros throughout the Philippines. It's a great way to generate electricity. It's fantastic for the community. And we've done it for a long time and we seem to be proficient at it.
Since coal is still the top pollutant among all energy sources, the company built a carbon sink in the highlands of Davao City to lessen carbon footprint. They partnered with the Matigsalug tribe to plant trees in the group's ancestral land. These include nara, mahogany, cacao, among others. Whether this is enough to counter carbon emissions remains to be seen, but the company says it will establish the same mitigating measures in all their coal plants nationwide. Will coal always be dirty? Will it ever be clean with the help of technology? Aboitiz Power says it's already making the uphill shift to renewables, but it will take time and investments. Meantime, the debate rages on. Camille Alemia, Rappler, Davao City.
So at least you have an understanding of the renewable energy mix that Aboitiz is trying to do. So this is actually a video again of the company, the Therma South. I don't need to repeat this again, but you can actually watch it straight from Aboitiz's website, just so you understand that Mindanao actually relies reasonably on a lot of power sources, and coal-fired power plant of TSI is actually that solution, 300 megawatts of that power. This is actually them. So they're just showing what they're actually creating and also how they reforested that entire Mindanao area, how they are actually a responsible power generator company. Just as much as we explained how a lot of companies in the Philippines, specifically Nicolasia, is a responsible miner. Now, let's understand a few things. There are those issues about coal plant going on unplanned outage, and there's that specific people who think that is this outage a plan to increase electricity, which of course the company vehemently denied. Because every time a coal plant goes on an unplanned outage, it means that there's no electricity to sell, and therefore it's a loss of revenues, and no company actually wants to lose revenues on shutting down. So this is due to damages of the boilers. And for those who don't know, this Mariveles coal power plant is actually a partnership between ASEN, AC Energy, and Aboitiz Power, Therma, and subsidiary Therma Power and Power Partners. This is a 602 by 316 or 632 megawatt. It started commercial operations in 2014 and has been providing competitively priced baseload power to several distribution utilities. So as of 2014, really, it was really cheaper to just do coal. Gen Power Mariveles Coal Plant is a partnership among AC, Aboitiz Power, and started operations and has been serving a lot of distribution utilities. A few things more. This is Mariveles coal-fired power plant. This is a 600 megawatt facility. So that is in Bataan. Okay, yun. This is also something that is important, the GN Power Dinginin. After the success of the Mariveles coal power plant, GN Power also developed the GN Power Dinginin. This is a 2 by 668 megawatt supercritical coal-fired power plant located at Dinginin, Mariveles, Bataan. GNPD achieved its financial closing in December 2015 and started the construction of first unit in September 2016. It also won several competitive selection processes by distribution utilities, which were conducted individually or as an aggregation group, a testament for its competitive price offer. To date, GNPD is considered by far the biggest coal-fired power plant built in this country of the Philippines, has contracts with 30 distribution utilities and 2 retail electricity suppliers. So for those who are watching this show, you may not have known, but you're actually perhaps using electricity that got generated with a coal-fired power plant. The growth of the Philippine economy has always been directly proportional to energy consumption, and thus this entails a rising demand for reliable power if we are to expect sustained economic expansion even post-pandemic. With decreasing cost of electricity in the country, Calls for renewable energy is the immediate alternative source for baseload power. It's been growing as well. But as of this point, the Philippines cannot solely rely on just renewable energy just yet due to intermittence, particularly with wind or solar power. Baseload energy supply is still needed to ensure that we have available, adequate, and cost-efficient electricity, something that we showed a while ago in that video, the energy mix. So Aboitiz Power is further transitioning to more renewable energies to respond as a response to climate-related risks and to support the government's effort to build the renewable energy market in the Philippines. The country has proved that we may not be where we are now, but we are surely getting there. So a few things, business development. So it's been a long time coming. The IPO was 2010, 2007, but the company's business was actually since 1998 in Cebu City. They invested in electricity generation and distribution for almost 23 years already. Ownership in Aboitiz Power was open to the public on July 16, 2007. Right now, they have 4 strategic business units: power generation, power distribution, retail electricity services, and distributed energy. So they want to still focus on their wind, hydro, and solar in high-growth geographic markets as long as there's acceptable regulatory environments. They're the leader in terms of installed capacity. They're the second largest distribution utility in terms of captive customer connections and energy sales, the second largest in terms of the number of customers, and the third largest in terms of a total share of total retail market demand in the country. It's a pioneer in building and operating run-of-the-river hydropower plants in the country. And through its renewable energy subsidiaries, it has the largest installed capacity of renewable energy under its market control. Okay, they have all throughout the Philippines, from Benguet in the north until Davao in the south. They are a leading player with privately owned power generation companies, RES services, and distribution utilities. A few things. This will showing to you the mixture of renewable and non-renewable as a function of baseload and peaking power plants. In order to address a 24-hour demand of the country, the coal and geothermal handles the baseload demand. Hydropower, solar, and oil-based plants handle intermediate to peaking demand. And so that was something that they discussed. In 2021, for instance, Aboitiz owns 4,429 megawatts of net attributable capacity, of which 3,494 is currently operating. They want to double this size, so about 9,000 megawatts, from a portfolio of renewables. All right, so they own interest where 9 distribution utilities in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So they distribute all throughout the Philippines, including Visayan Electric and Davao Light and Power Company, Inc. This is the second and third largest distribution utility in the Philippines, respectively. So far in 2020, they sold a total of 7,151,601 megawatts per hour. The power generation supplies power to various customers under the power supply contract, ancillary service procurement agreements, ASPA, and for trading in the WESM. The power distribution business is engaged in distribution and sale of electricity to the end users, residential, RES, and others, including retail electricity sales to various off-takers considered eligible contestable customers, and a provision of electricity-related services, such as installation of electrical equipment. They engage in a supply of retail electricity, selling a total of 3.26 terawatt hours during 2020. As of March 23, 2021, the first quarter of the year, Aboitiz Equity Ventures owns 77% of the total outstanding stock of Aboitiz Power. 7.54% is actually owned by directors, officers, and the other related parties, which means only 16% or 15% is owned by the public. Neither Aboitiz Power or any of its subsidiaries is subject to bankruptcy, receivership, and so forth. So they have this family, Aboitiz Power, had a 20% interest in the Visayan Electric since the early 1900s. You can even trace their involvement in power distribution in the 1930s when Aboitiz and Company acquired Ormoc Electric Light Company and its accompanying ice plant, the Holo Power Company, and the Cotabato Light and Power Company, Cotabato Light. So, yun. Okay, so a few things. This was actually the results in their first online stockholders meeting last year, Zoom 2020, April 2020. They discussed their full year numbers for the last 2019. You could see that the revenue was about 120 to 130 billion pesos. So providing electricity for the entire Philippines, Luzon to Mindanao. Financial highlights for 2019, there was a 20% loss here from about 20 billion to about 17 billion pesos. Return on equity is somewhere here, and therefore there was a loss on earnings per share from 2.95 to 2.35. Dividends, however, remained there, which is always half of whatever they earn. So if they earn 3 pesos, they give you 1.5 and so forth. So 2019, they gave 1.47, and then in 2020, they resumed to pay out half, which is about a peso 20 cents. Dividend yields are just computed by dividing the DBES on the closing price of that declaration date. So every year, the company has been actually more stable. Yeah. A few things, if you notice for December 31, 2020 full year results, you could see that their total assets about 400 billion pesos. Liabilities about 56% current liability. Total liability is 263 billion. They've got retained earnings here of about 100 billion. Stockholders equity of 134. Therefore, your book value per share is about 17 peso per share. Okay, so this is your net income, 12 billion pesos for last year, 12.5. For the 10-year stock performance, as you could see, they have outperformed largely the PSEI. Those are just share prices, not yet including the dividends, which they pay regularly every year, something in the realm of about a peso every year. So let's assume that you did hold Aboitiz Power when it was listed in 2007. That was about 14 years ago. You would have received at least 14 to 15 pesos worth of dividends, aside from the fact that Aboitiz actually went from about 5 pesos to as much as about, well, it's currently 23 pesos plus the dividends. Okay, so in the 10-year strategy, so you already saw this. They want to go a lot of clean energy. And so far, in their first quarter 2021, they discussed that the GN Power Dinginin is very close to actually operating. So there's just a few delays, but this one is going to be base load coal power. And Aboitiz Power, of course, will continue to push renewable energy forward. So EBITDA is about 12 billion during the first quarter of 2021. And this is 60% higher than the last year, based from higher water inflows, improved availability for thermal plants, increased spot sales, and other income from liquidated damages and business interruption claims. Capacity sold for first quarter is about 3,558 megawatts compared to last year. Energy sold increased by 8% to 6,130 gigawatt hours compared to 5,675 in 2020. In their distribution unit, you could see that Aboitiz Power's distribution EBITDA is 2 billion, around 2% lower than last year. Energy sales were about 1,308 megawatts during the first 3 months of 2021. This was driven by lower energy consumption from commercial and industrial customer segments as a continuation of COVID-related community quarantines. For the total consolidated assets of about 405 billion pesos, cash and cash equivalents about 46.9 billion pesos, while their interest-bearing liabilities is about 234 billion pesos. Their current ratio is still at 1.3x, while its net debt to equity ratio is maintained at 1.4x versus the year-end 2020. So you can actually learn more in their first online stockholders meeting. You can see it. Actually, try to subscribe to Ma'am Lala Rimando. You can get some updates if you want to understand all the Aboitiz Power related numbers. Yeah, so there's a lot. So I just took the highlights on the stockholders meeting. This is also a good interview, the Aboitiz press con after their 2021 annual shareholders meeting, which happened around March 2021. So this is an important question and answer. This is addressed to the CEO. In your 50-50 renewable energy to thermal ratio in the next 10 years, what will be the exact portfolio of projects that you are pursuing? In example, how many megawatts of renewable energy exactly? How much solar, how much wind, how much hydro, how much more of thermal, and how much investment had been allocated for these ventures, aside from the disclosure of about 23 billion peso capex for the Dinginin and BESS. What's the place of gas in your targeted mix and investment portfolio, and when will gas capacity be part of that capacity addition? So that's a very good question. 2 minute 41, I will play that exact question and answer portion for you, as well as this one. The 39th minute is a very important Q&A, again addressed to Mr. Emmanuel Rubio, because this is an Aboitiz press con, which is the entire conglomerate. Just like Ayala Corporation is a conglomerate, Aboitiz Equity Ventures is a conglomerate, and for this discussion today, we're just discussing Aboitiz Power. In this question, I want you to hear as well the reaction to the Department of Energy's warning about those anti-competitive economic sabotage charges filed against generation companies on prolonged outages, Aboitiz Power being one of them. What is also the status of GMEC1's repair, which is one of their coal-fired power plants? So we're going to the second minute and the 39th minute. Let's watch it here. Okay. This is Aboitiz Equity Ventures. So this is the Aboitiz Equity Ventures annual shareholders meeting, which you can just watch straight from your YouTube show. Let's go watch this one. Let's hear his answer.
At the moment, we have land bank about 350 that we own, and the option for another 1,100 hectares. We have an 850 megawatt renewable energy service contract from the DOE, and we will actually start with this and move on as we go, in the next 10 years. We are actually looking at really for the DOE to drive compliance to RPS. This is the single driver for growth of RE in the Philippines, and we look forward to the for JAP to start, so that generators like us will have a venue to other than contracting individual customers, to participate in auctions when entities that are required to comply with RPS put their markers for future contracts, hopefully for 10-year contracts. And as I said, that will bring us probably to 3,900 megawatts in 2030. That may not be exactly 50-50, but I think it's going to be very close to that. On the next move for baseload, right? We said we've always looked at the option of choosing gas. In fact, when as we speak, we already have a team looking at our gas option. We're doing very early on a very early stage feasibility studies for gas on at least two locations. Please note also that we are partners with Meralco and RP Energy, and since we have communicated that in RP Energy we will not be building coal anymore, that we are actually reserving that site for possible gas option to supply at CSP by Meralco or any other TU that will have a CSP say for repairing, and even for NGCP's an NGCP provider for ancillary services. I don't have the exact number with me, Mirna, as regards capex for the next 10 years, as we are still a lot of moving pieces and costs variation in terms of whether it's solar, whether it's wind, but mainly for the renewable energy project that we have, a significant portion obviously will come from solar, but in the end, I think the main constraint with that would be land. And I think he who has land will win. That's why we also feel that we have a very valuable asset in our reservoirs, in our hydros, in Bagat, in Abuklao, in Binga, where we can consider also putting up sizable floating solar capacities moving forward. Will there be an opportunity for coal in the future? We are not closing we're not coming up with a definitive position in coal. I think DOE, we all know that DOE came up with a coal moratorium policy and still allowing brownfield coal, and with certain categories, especially like supercritical coal, moving forward. And those would already permits to proceed. I think in certain areas of the Philippines, there will be specific niches where coal will remain to be competitive. And at the end of the day, I think it will be still market forces that will decide that. Will we participate? I think it's something that we have that we will continue to look at. But the option really that we are considering, particularly in the zone, would be gas.
Okay, so you've heard that part, and this one, let's listen to the last part, which is 34th minute, 37th minute. Okay, let's try to listen to this one. This one, for
my answer to your question. But anyway,
okay.
As I said,
so as you could see, there's a part that they discussed about the outages. Anyway, this one is about the hydro, wind, and solar. This one is also good.
Groundbreaking, hopefully within the year, for a project in Kayanga, Pangasinan for 73 megawatts. And then it will probably take 2 years for the data that we will get from the 2 met masts that we have installed also in Pangasinan. So that 1,600 is a part of the 3,800 or 3,900 that we're looking at in the next 10 years. But I typed my response to you privately.
Okay, guys, that is a very interesting ASM. If you're interested, just watch that. You've got Mr. Manny Rubio explaining the entire thing. And if you take a look and tag the news on Aboitiz Power, they sought some 30 billion pesos from retail bonds as they empower a lot of Filipinos who wants to join them in this clean energy portfolio. Of course, the power plant in Bataan, that would be the supercritical power plant, is the Dinginin. It's going to go online in 2021. They also cleared with the SEC some 6 billion fixed rate bonds already. That would be a part of this one. They slashed this year's budget by 36% to 47 billion pesos. This is for AEV as a whole unit. But as for Aboitiz Power, expansion is there, and they bagged first base supply contract. Yeah. So there's more. If you want to listen to this, Aboitiz Power President and CEO Manny Rubio was actually interviewed by April after the March 2021 results. We can actually watch this one in the ANC Insight. I'll just take you to the 7th minute right now. So this is 21 minutes. So let's just go straight to the 7th minute. So it's you can watch all of these yourself. Let's see.
Two of them are almost at the door.
Wait up here.
Not knowing how this thing is going to last. We have stopped some of the projects, which were almost 2 of them are almost at the towards the end. And these are acquisition projects overseas. We've shared this, we've disclosed this, and I think those were the right decisions at the time. We're now rebooting. We are actually looking at a growth strategy, which should just finished looking forward up to 2030 of transitioning our portfolio towards a more balanced mix, and really going to focus on renewable energy. Renewable energy has always been the focus of Aboitiz Power. We are together with our partners. We are the largest. We have the largest capacity of renewable energy in the country, and we will continue to look into that, especially with the opportunities in renewable portfolio standards and the program that the DOE is actually going to implement on the energy auction pricing, which will be the venue for forward contracting for to allow investments in renewable energy to feed the requirements for the renewable portfolio standards.
So going forward, like what percentage of your portfolio would you want renewable energy to be? And will the expansion be
Okay, so a lot of people will ask about the renewable energy, 50-50. You can actually watch more of the video and insights. But what we want you to see straight from the website of Aboitiz Power are the following. So I know that it's been a long discussion, but this one is important. For those who aren't aware, Aboitiz Power is aiming for a 50-50 balance. It's one of the companies in the Philippines who can execute that solar. They've been in the Philippines power generation for since 1997. If you go further, since 1900s. So you can actually take a look at their annual report. This is, I took a look at the sustainability reports. I'll show to you a few things. This is from their 2020 annual report, sustainability report. As you know, Aboitiz Equity Ventures is the conglomerate who owns Aboitiz Power. They are also the owner of Union Bank, Pilmico Foods, Aboitiz Infra Capital, and Aboitiz Land. So as a company itself, you could see that the revenues here is 186 billion. 120 or about 60 to 70% of that is actually Aboitiz Power. So here, 110 billion revenue. So really, this company by blood is an Aboitiz Power company. Okay, people, planet, profit. So these are their current ESG metrics. They've got 37,188 members or total employees, number of installed automated weather stations, number of stakeholders served, amount of CSR fund, how many trees have they planted, and their profit in a year. 15 billion pesos, return on equity. This is an important part since we're going to discuss Aboitiz Power per se. Take a look at this one. So Mr. Emmanuel Rubio will come out often in your, he's actually the COO and is now the CEO. Metrics that matter, let's understand these parts. 2020 marked the achievement of the strategic goal of 4,000 megawatts of net attributable capacity. And they want to set the benchmark for the next decade to be 9,000 megawatts, as you well know. Despite the setbacks, the generation business were successfully rehabilitating the Nag Power Plant Complex, the unit Therma Power Visayas, the rehab to 39 megawatts for this Therma Power Visayas, twice its previous output. The pilot floating solar projects of our joint venture, this is the SNAP, has proven its viability to proceed with the engineering design for 67 megawatts. So as you know, they control a lot of hydropower plants. So if they can do solar farms by floating, that would be better. So floating solar in those rivers. Amazing, no? All right. So for Unit 2, the completion and commercial operation dates remain uncertain as of the first week of April 2021. In 2020, they also embarked on its first foray into battery technology. This is SNAP's 20 megawatt battery energy storage system, or BESS, in Ramon Isabela and Therma Marine. TMI 49 megawatt hybrid BESS in Maco, Davao de Oro. These are just among the 12 BESS projects with a total capacity of 248 megawatt that Aboitiz Power is targeting to develop in the next 10 years to ensure the stability and security of the Philippine power grid. Let's take a look on the metrics that matter. Distribution unit in 2018 to 2020, Visayan Electric, they power up 7%. Davao Light 7.88%, Cotabato Light 8.88%, Subic 3.2%, Mactan 0.93%, Balamban 0.47%, Lima Enerzone 5.37%. So government mandated cap in 2020 is 6.5%. This is their APDU systems loss. Sorry, so that's the systems loss per site, per distribution unit. Almost 1 million DU customers, 3,500 megawatt attributable net sellable capacity, 9.68 billion pesos income contribution to AEV. So these are the sites. This is the Hector FLS Hydro, 6.4 megawatt gross capacity in Bakun, Benguet. So the distribution businesses continue to keep light on all the customers and communities, even with the quarantine measures in place. Positive energy, so the key strategy would be just to aim for that 50-50. We should be bullish for the future of Aboitiz Power as the country is slowly getting back on track. And to sustain the economy, we need energy for the next 10 years. So milestones, you can actually check it out. The Generation Business Group, those income and their outlook. So these are all coming from their reports. And of course, the much needed boost in local pandemic response. This is a very strong in terms of ESG, environmental and sustainability amongst the Philippine companies. You can check more in the Aboitiz website. This is how they handled biodiversity and conservation. There's a lot of interesting things straight from Aboitiz Power's website. And even on their Facebook, if you wanted to check, this is their Facebook page. So you could see that this is a company right now in the Philippine market that I would assume had been actually neglected. It was actually neglected. Aboitiz Power avoids potential productivity losses with GE Digital Software. They have been using data science. You can actually check all of these. Call conversations with Aboitiz Power. I played a few of the videos, Manny Rubio with Kathy Yang, and I haven't shared that yet. But even with how they choose employees, they help people who are actually needing work. So they're actually growing as a company responsibly. So I guess that for those who, to end this, it's nearing an hour, sorry about that. To end this report, for people who ask me at 170 billion pesos, should they buy Aboitiz Power? First and foremost, I think that Aboitiz Power will not go below 20 pesos. If and when that is the case, I think that 17 to 23, take an average of 20 pesos, you should be seeing yourself getting at least a 5% dividend if it goes below 20 pesos, and at current levels about 4%. While you're waiting, this is a company that is as big as your Meralcos. In the Philippines, you've got Meralco and Aboitiz Power and Ayala Corporation, these three companies. These are the largest energy distributors and power generators in the Philippines. So although we haven't heard as much on the international front, we do plan to do 13% growth. And in here in Awesome10X, we want to feature companies that you can just buy and keep. So you will just keep on cost averaging. Let's say 23 pesos today, you buy. Next week, it goes 21. Next month, it goes 20 pesos. Next year, it's still at 20 pesos. It doesn't matter because if you think about it, for the next 10 foreseeable years, indeed, the Philippine economy will need power. You are able to watch me here because you've got power, electricity in your homes. And if you ever ask yourself, who is powering my home? What's my electricity utility provider? Most likely, it would be an Aboitiz Power in your vicinity or even a Meralco. So in that certain light, whether you have conflicting issues with coal power, as you could see, they quite explained that the base load is actually a necessity, the base load demand. It's going to take time for the Philippines to actually enter into that renewable energy market. But for now, it's good to see that this company is doing a goal to actually grow it to about 9,000 megawatts in line with how the Philippine economy is also growing. So I hope that you got an interesting outlook for Aboitiz Power and learned today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. This is Nikki signing out.